So in this third video on ACI interface configuration, we are going to have a quick look at the interface policies and the policy groups. So as you remember from the other videos, there are a number of different policies that we need to tie together to actually light up an interface. And as just mentioned, we're going to actually look at the policy groups and the interface policies or the interface settings. So what I'll do is I'll log back onto the simulator that I've got running, and we're going to delve over to the Fabric tab, the access policies, and then we're going to open up the policies and actually look at the interface policies themselves. As you'll see, there's a number of them, and what I'm going to do is create a couple of policies for LLDP. As you'll see, there's a default policy there, and we'll look at that in a short while. But first thing I'm going to do is make a couple of explicit policies. So one for LLDP enabled and one for LLDP disabled, so that I know exactly what that policy is going to do. If we look at the CDP policies, we've got the default one, and as you can see there, it's set to disabled. I don't like the default policies because unless you know what's configured, enabled or disabled, it's not especially clear. So the next thing we'll do is we'll go over to the policy groups, and this is just an interface template. And as mentioned before, an access policy template can be used again and again, so it's a repeatable or reusable template. So I'm going to make one for my F5 device. I'm going to enable LLDP, and I'm going to allow it access to all of my VLANs. So there is an alternate way that I can actually build an access port policy group. I could say, for example, that it's a 1 gig port and I've got CDP enabled. So this is very much an alternate way. I've seen a few customers use this. It's not my preferred method, but let's see how it works. So I didn't have a policy already created. So as part of the process of creating the group, I'm actually going to go in and make a policy or define that policy for 1 gig, and I'll allow access to all my VLANs. Just to show you where this has been created, if I now open up the policies themselves and I go into the interface policies, and then if I look at the link level policy, what I will be able to see is that I've now created this 1 gig policy that I can use as part of my policy group. I'm going to delete it. As I say, I've shown you just a way that you can actually use it, a way that you can create a policy group in a different way. I always very much prefer to actually name the policy groups after the interface, or after the devices rather, that I'm going to attach to the interface. While we're here, I'll go make another VPC policy group. So this is for my second Nexus 7K. I'll enable CDP, I'll allow it access to all of my VLANs, and I'm going to have LACP active. And I'm just really reusing all of the different policies that I've made previously. And this is one of the great things about ACI. Once you've built up these policies, once you've defined these policies, you can use them again and again and again. When it comes to policy groups, if it's an access port policy group, again, you can use that repeatedly. It's a reusable policy, reusable policy group. If it's a VPC or if it's a port channel, it has to be a one-to-one mapping per the attached device. And that's because behind the scenes, what it actually does is it goes and creates a channel group member. So now that I've got my policy groups defined, I can now go to the switch definitions or the logical switch definitions, just create an access port as we've seen previously. So it's Ethernet 20, port 1/20, and I'm just going to apply the policy group for my 7K, exactly as you've seen before. What I'm then going to do is go to the interface itself and actually add a description so that when I log onto the switch on the CLI, I can actually see the description or the name of that attached device. So as you can see, actually creating these policy groups and reusing them where possible and doing the interface policies is extremely simple. So I guess just to wrap up and just a quick summary, definitely avoid wherever possible, definitely avoid always, I would say, using the default values. And the reason for that is unless you absolutely know what the default value is, it's not obvious how the port is going to be configured. So always make explicitly named policies. It's worth remembering that if you modify a policy, that all the policy groups that are using that policy will also be modified, and therefore all the interfaces that are using that policy group will also be modified. As I've mentioned a couple of times, If it's an access type of policy group, that's a reusable template. So you can use that as many times as you want across as many interfaces as you want to. However, if it's a port channel or a virtual port channel, these have to have a one-to-one relationship to the attached device. Otherwise, what you do is you end up just making one huge port channel across all the attached devices on your network, which is a very bad thing to do. So it's absolutely a one-to-one relationship. Every time you're going to attach your device on a port channel or a VPC, you make a specific policy group for that attached device. Well, this was just a very quick run through of how to configure access policies and the policy groups. As you can see, it's very, very straightforward and very simple. In the next video, in part 4, we're going to look at AAPs and domains and VLAN pools in a little bit more detail. Thanks very much for watching.